pit whose family brought it to light, I should have considered its source." He was silent then, as Santini finished and swept the hairs carefully from the floor. He tied them into a square of linen and withdrew, looking back at me, triumphant in his malice. A rat crossed the floor by the silver washstand. "The diamond was named for the Régent, a libertine cradled in depravity," the Emperor said. "But then you, Monsieur le Comte, are our historian." "One might almost believe the stone was cursed," I said. "Curses are just excuses for the bad behavior of men," he said. "Discord followed the owners of that diamond, madness too, in all the Pitt family. Once I thought it brought good fortune. It was then my talisman. Man is ever ready to chase the marvelous, to abandon what is close and run after what is fabricated for him." "What became of the Régent?" I pressed him. "It has a long history. Open the door and let us walk in the air which God made." We left the room, where the curtains had already blown to rags. 5 portraits of his son, the King of Rome, stood on the grey wood fireplace, next to which hung a watch on a chain of the last Empress's hair. "It is a bad haircut this time, is it not?" he said, rubbing his head as we passed a mirror, already pitted and misted by the weather. In the room where I take his dictation, of what I shall call Memorial of St. Helena, his large creased maps fluttered to escape their coloured pins. He picked up the billiard cue that he uses as a stick and a measure, and we entered the darkening garden. Immediately the guards raised the yellow flag that meant the Emperor was outside, and one of the English dogs appeared. He took my arm. "You wish to know more? You are always seeking the genealogy of things," he said. The Emperor was right. I now had a mighty curiosity to know all about this diamond from his sword, a jewel of the first water, the size of a small, fat plum. The Régent was the first diamond of France, known as our national diamond. I thought of the kings who had worn it, and at once began to see how a chronicle of the ancient diamond could be the story of us all, our lost France, and how we came to be here. Could I find this story and tell it? "I will help you," said the Emperor. We crunched over the whitened bones of the sea that once covered this part of the island. Razor clams, tubes long hollowed of life, mounds of silvery silt that had drifted from far away. In the distance, green clouds had collapsed on Diana's Peak. We walked out into the leftovers of the volcano, the chopped black rocks, charred ravines and gorges, one of the dogs still following. "I can tell you my part in the diamond's history, from when I first possessed it to the time Louise fled," said the Emperor, gripping my arm so that I felt a bruise begin. "I took all the papers regarding the imperial jewels so I might prove my case on what they owed me. Some may still be in my trunks, though they were so plundered I scarcely know what I have or lack. I once had records of those who stole the jewels, and even many papers from the Pitt ancestor, in English." I feared we might come to the subject of the English lessons I was trying to give him. The Emperor's progress had been slow. He blamed it on his mind being too old to learn a new tongue. I suspected it was rather his ill health, lack of sleep, and the pestilence of the winds here on Deadwood Plain. The Emperor then began to speak of phenomena and ghosts, and how long ago Josephine had gotten him to read palms for her friends. He would look at their faces and just make up their fortunes. He said General de Montholon now believed there was a ghost in our house, Longwood. "I am their only ghost," he said. "We always seek to place blame on things, on a jewel, on the maledictions of spirits, when the fault lies in the natural progressions, youth to age, pleasure to disappointment, fidelity to betrayal." Then you do not think your good fortune deserted with the stone?" He made no response. The wet air clung to our faces as a permanent sweat. Often we would lie motionless on our sofas as pearls of warm dew skittered across the stunted lawns. The crosswinds blasted dry all that should have been lush. All that might have grown had been forced down or askew. We had yellow skies, blue nights and red dawns, forests of coromandel ebony and lavender-misted mornings streaked with marigold. If they were beautiful, no one noticed. The English here made boundaries for him who once drew his own. I asked the Emperor if I might search the trunk where he suspected the documents lay hidden. "It was only in getting rid of the diamond that I was victorious at Marengo," he said, "for we rode on horses the diamond bought when it was pawned. If you wish to put together a brief history, I will search out the papers. But it must not outweigh your attentions to me or your son." I readily agreed. I almost never disagreed. We walked along a bit in silence. A cloud of fat blue flies rose from the gum trees to nibble at us. Even on the brimstone heading to nothing, the Emperor moves fast, his gait between a stride and waddle, for he has spent much time mounted. I could scarcely keep pace, though we are almost the same height. Actually, the Emperor is taller than I am by several inches. When we walk side by side, however, I have caught him rising to the balls of his feet when he pauses and turns to address me. I have scrunched myself even lower, so as to obviate this need of his, but he only seems to rise higher. At those times I must try to remember all he says until I can race to the nearest ink pot. As though he knows this, he seems to say the most interesting things then. When a gentleman is taller than the Emperor, he does not look up, and I have seen many men contort themselves to gain his eye. Suddenly the Emperor's attention was drawn to a captain he particularly disliked, one who always followed too close upon his boots. This guard was too attentive to the Emperor's every pause and glance, even when he just bent to inspect some foliage or a snail. "One escape is never enough," said the Emperor, reversing course to Longwood, his prison and mine. From his room I heard the sounds of his metal trunks being moved and opened amidst the most terrible oaths, and the thump of his fire-poker on one of the rats. The hair in my pocket was soft as a child's hair. Eventually he emerged, dishevelled, with a great bundle of papers, some still bearing thick seals with the crests of ancient houses and the governments of the Revolution upon them. Wax splinters from the cracking seals fell onto the floor. "The Régent was a thing of the king's. I should never have brought it back," he said then, and allowed me to take the papers. I began to think how I might write this history in the evenings as a diversion from my endeavour to tell the Emperor's life for my memorial. At such times he would be absorbed by the Iliad or Odyssey, Herodotus, Pliny, or Strabo. He read of past thrones and ancient wars, of dead heroes and conquerors almost on a par with himself. He read of families turned upon one another. Sometimes he told stories of his past, or read plays aloud, taking all the parts, and we listened together, our jealousies and conflicts forgotten. "Shall we go to a comedy or tragedy tonight?" he would say, then send my son Emmanuel for the play. More often than not it was a tragedy. Unless invited to sit, we stood or leaned against the damp walls, and in this invisible etiquette he found the last trace of his power. The valets in full livery passed among these generals and marshals of France, with bad coffee, their silver lace as tarnished now as the braid of the uniforms. Sugar burned in vermeil bowls to correct the air. We had stopped mixing with our English jailers, for those of any note refused to call him sire.